This podcast contains content related to child exploitation and criminal investigations. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The views expressed are those of the host and do not represent any official agency. All individuals discussed are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. It started with just a knock. No SWAT, no shouting, no chaos. Just my team standing at the front door of an Air Force major's house, following up on a CyberTip. A CyberTip that started on Kik, a messaging app most parents have never heard of. Inside his house, we found something most people could never imagine. Not just illegal images, not just incriminating searches, but a document, a manifesto, a file he possessed, not one that he wrote, but one offenders pass around like a handbook. That's what it was. It was a playbook, a step-by-step guide to grooming children, how to gain their trust, how to normalize secrecy, how to escalate from words to abuse. And here's the terrifying part. What that document described wasn't unique. It was nearly identical to what we've seen in other cases, and it matched the behavior we see offenders use every single day online. Today, we're going to talk about grooming, what it is, how it works, and why every parent needs to understand the warning signs. Because grooming doesn't happen by accident. It happens because offenders practice it. And children and parents don't always see it for what it is until it's too late. I'm investigator Sean Lacy, and this is Chasing Shadows. This podcast is about real cases, real offenders, and the digital tools that they use. But it's not just about telling dark stories. It's about exposing them so parents and communities can fight back. In every episode, we'll use real investigations to uncover how predators operate, and then pivot to what you, as a parent, can do to protect your kids. No polish, no politics, just the truth behind the takedown and the lessons that can save a child. Today's episode begins with the case of an Air Force major, a CyberTip, and a disturbing manifesto found on one of his devices. But the focus isn't on him. It's on grooming, the process offenders use to manipulate children into abuse. If you're a parent, a teacher, or someone who cares for or about a child, this is one you can't afford to miss. The first thread in this case came through a CyberTip. These tips are generated when platforms detect or report suspected exploitation. They're routed through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC for short, and then pushed out to investigators like me. We get a lot of them, thousands every week nationwide, but each one represents the possibility of a child in danger. This particular tip came from Kik, and what triggered it was a single image used as the profile picture of an account. I won't describe it in detail because I don't want to put that weight on you that I have to carry, but here's what I will say. It was a prepubescent child, nude, lying on a green carpet, positioned in a grotesque and sexual way. This was not curiosity. This was not a mistake. This was an image that only exists because a child was abused. That single file was enough to start an investigation. Kik had flagged it. NCMEC routed it. And now, it was in my hands. The account was eventually traced back to someone a bit unexpected. An Air Force major. A man with a career. A family. And standing in the community. Someone people trusted by default. someone whose job carried authority and honor. And that's what made it so disturbing, because predators don't always look like the monsters we imagine. Sometimes they look like the person your community salutes. When we executed the search warrant, his wife and children were home. That part never gets easier. You're walking into a family's life and telling them that the man of the house, the husband, the father, is under investigation for crimes that they can't even begin to process. We collected devices from the home. Later, additional devices were located in his vehicle on base. Each one cataloged, bagged, and sent for forensic review. On those devices, we found more than just images. We found his search history. And in that search history were the seeds of intent. He'd been looking for jobs online to become a babysitter. Think about that for a second. A grown man, an officer in the United States Air Force, searching for ways to gain direct access to children through employment. That's grooming in its earliest, most predatory form. Not just seeking images online, but actively searching for opportunities to place himself in a position of trust over children. And then there's that document I mentioned. I don't know what else to call it but a manifesto. It wasn't written by him, but he had it. It was a file investigators have seen passed around between offenders before. It laid out step by step how to groom a child, how to gain trust, how to normalize secrecy, and how to escalate. Reading it was chilling. It made me sick to my stomach. Not because the words were new. I'd seen grooming played out in real cases dozens of times, but because it confirmed everything we already knew. That grooming isn't random. It's deliberate. It's taught. It's celebrated. And it's shared. Offenders trade not just images, but instructions. They treat grooming like a skill to be practiced. In court, this case ended with a conviction. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison. And I want you to think about that. 20 years of his life gone because he chose to prey on children. The law recognized the seriousness of what he possessed, what he was seeking, and what he intended to do. But for me, the real takeaway wasn't the number of years on his sentence. It was what the case revealed about grooming itself. That even someone in a position of trust, a father, a husband, an Air Force major, can be an offender. That grooming is intentional, repeatable, and devastatingly effective. And that's why parents need to understand it. So, let's talk about grooming. What does it look like? How it works? And how you can recognize it before it's too late. So, the question is, what is grooming? Grooming is the process of building a relationship with a child, and often their family, with the intention of sexual exploitation. It's not random. It's not impulsive. It's calculated, intentional, and planned. Offenders don't usually start with threats. They don't kick the door in and scare a child into silence. Instead, they start small, with kindness and flattery and attention. They make themselves look like the one safe person in a child's world. And slowly, step by step, they move that child from trust to secrecy to compliance. And here's the critical part. Grooming doesn't just happen online. It happens offline too. In churches, schools, on sports teams, and youth organizations, anywhere adults have regular access to children. But the internet has made grooming easier, faster, and less noticeable. And that's why parents need to understand it. Let's walk through the stages of grooming. And as we do, I want you to think not just about some abstract child. Think about your child, your student, your neighbor. Because the only way to spot this is to picture it in real life. Stage 1, targeting the victim. The first step, according to the Manifesto, is choosing a child. Offenders don't usually throw a dart at the wall. They look for vulnerability. Vulnerability can mean a lot of things. A child who's lonely. A child from a single-parent home. A child who posts online about hating their stepdad or not having any friends. A child who craves validation. These are the kids offenders zero in on. In the Major's case, he was literally searching for babysitting jobs. Think about that. He was just waiting for a child to cross his path online. He was actively looking for opportunities to put himself in a position of trust, to be left alone with kids. That's targeting. It's not chance. It's strategy. Stage 2, gaining trust. Once a child is identified, the next step is building trust. This can take weeks, months, or even years. Trust building looks like friendship. It looks like mentorship. It looks like someone who gets the child. Online, it might be hours of late-night chats. You're so mature for your age. Your parents don't understand you, but I do. And here's what makes it even more dangerous. Offenders often work to gain the trust of the families too. We've seen those cases where predators volunteer to babysit, to coach, or to give children rides home. They insert themselves into the family life so no one suspects them. That's why parents often describe offenders as the last person they'd ever expect. Because that's the point. They're building trust on every level. Stage 3, filling a need. Children, like all of us, have needs. Emotional needs, social needs, sometimes material needs. Offenders study those needs, and then they fill them. Maybe it's as simple as constant attention. A child who feels ignored at home suddenly has someone texting them all day. Good morning. How was your test? Sweet dreams. That attention feels like care, but it's not. It's control. Sometimes offenders give gifts. Online, that might look like in-game currency, prepaid phone cards, or sending money through apps. Offline, it might look like actual presents, rides, or meals. The goal isn't generosity. The goal is dependency. To make a child feel like they owe something back. Stage 4, isolation and secrecy. This is the turning point. Up until now, grooming can look like friendship. But here, secrecy is introduced. The offender will say things like, "Don't tell your parents, they wouldn't understand," or "This is our secret. It makes us special." Once a child agrees to keep even one small secret, the offender has leverage. That secret becomes the wall that keeps the parents out. And every secret after that grows the wall taller. In practice, it might look like a child who suddenly becomes protective of their phone, a child who closes a laptop when you walk in, a child who deletes texts or hides apps. Parents often dismiss this as teenage privacy, but sometimes it's secrecy. And secrecy is one of the biggest red flags of grooming. Step 5. Escalation to abuse. Once secrecy is normalized, escalation begins. And by this point, the child is conditioned to go along with it. It might start with requests for photos. At first, innocent ones. Then more explicit. It might shift into sexual conversations, testing boundaries one line at a time. Eventually, it can lead to physical meetings, travel, or direct abuse. And here's what shocks most parents. Many children comply, not because they want to, not because they consent, but because they don't know how to say no anymore. Grooming convinces them that they choose this, when in reality, choice was stripped away the moment secrecy entered the picture. So let's talk about why grooming works. Part of it is psychology. Children and teens crave independence. They want validation. Their brains are still developing. They don't evaluate risk the way that us adults do. An offender offering attention, love, or gifts hits those psychological buttons perfectly. Part of it is trust. Offenders are skilled at blending in. They seem safe and kind and generous. They don't fit the stereotype of the scary stranger in the dark alley. They look like a family friend, the coach, the babysitter, even the decorated Air Force major. And part of it is silence. Grooming convinces kids that they can't tell, that they'll be blamed, that they'll be in trouble, that their parents won't understand. Offenders use shame as a weapon. And once a child believes they're complicit, the silence becomes nearly impossible to break, even for decades. Parents often ask, how did I not see this? The answer is because grooming is designed to be invisible. Offenders don't look like monsters. They look like friends. They look like people of authority. They look like people in positions of trust. That's why the Air Force major's case matters. He wasn't exactly hiding in the shadows. He was living in plain sight, in a neighborhood that most people would feel proud to live in, with a family that looked like a normal middle-class family, with a daughter that went to the same school as other kids. Parents miss it because they're not looking for it, and offenders count on that. And remember that document we found on his device? That wasn't unique. Offenders literally circulate manuals on how to groom. They treat it like a skill to be mastered. Step-by-step instructions on how to break down a child's defenses. If predators are teaching each other how to groom, parents need to teach each other how to spot it. Because this isn't instinct, it's strategy. And it only works if no one is paying attention. So that's grooming, targeting, building trust, filling a need, secrecy, escalation. It's not magic. It's not random. It's deliberate. And when you understand the pattern, you can see it coming. And that's what we'll talk about next. The warning signs. the conversations you can have with kids, and what to do if you suspect grooming is happening in your home. So what does all this mean for you as a parent? How do you recognize grooming before it's too late? Well, here are some of the red flags. Your child suddenly has a new friend you've never met, especially one who's older. They become secretive about their phone or computer use. They spend long, unexplained hours online late at night. You notice gifts, Amazon gift cards, or new items with no clear source. They may withdraw from family, lose interest in normal activities, or seem anxious when you ask about their online life. If you see these signs, don't panic. Don't accuse. Start a conversation. Make sure your child knows you're a safe person to tell. That no matter what happens, that they won't get in trouble. Offenders thrive on silence and shame. You break that by making sure your child knows you'll listen. And if you do suspect grooming, report it. The CyberTip line at NCMEC is available 24/7. Local law enforcement has investigators like me trained for these cases. I've gone out to many houses to help parents educate their kids on online safety and safety with adults. You don't have to solve it yourself, but you do have to take the first step. That manifesto we found wasn't unique. It was one of many. Offenders share these manuals because grooming works, and that's why parents need to understand it. Like we talked about, grooming isn't random. It's deliberate, but it's also preventable when parents, teachers, and communities know what to look for. In our next episode of Chasing Shadows, we'll look at another case, one built from a peer-to-peer network investigation. And we'll talk about how file sharing apps create risks for families and how to keep your kids safe online. I'm investigator Sean Lacy, and this is Chasing Shadows. Thank you for listening, and thank you for standing with me in this fight.